Everybody well lubricated? Well fed? I want to thank Al King for the donation of wines, the delicious vino. Yay! And we also want to thank Joanne Rosen of Wordrunner, standing in the back here. She is the one who made the new book, of which you hopefully have many proud copies now. Look so beautiful inside, all the layout, which is a huge ton of work and so important. It makes the book look really professional, and we thank you. And Cynthia Helen Beecher is here now, and she's going to read from page 18.
I think she's first going to speak.
After she talks a little first. She's special, she gets to talk. Oh, Joanne, did you want to say something?
Yes, Joanne,
No, she wants to come up. You guys going to do a duet?
Can Joanne come up?
Yes, she can. Come on up, Joanne.
Joanne, please come up so we can say thank you. Okay. Thank you, Joanne, for everything. It was a great pleasure working with you. We collaborated beautifully. I hope we get another chance sometime on other projects. Well, I'm sorry I missed the opening, and I did hear John read, so I was in the back and the flowers for quite a while. And I think actually this is a good time to say hello and thank you to all the writers, because you've been enveloped in their stories coming right off the pages. How exciting is that? I mean, it just gives you goosebumps. So I wanted to say just a word about the cover, the elm leaves on the front. You will read in the introduction, but I wanted to just mention that it is known to be the tree of justice and longevity, and that I feel that our writing community is mirrored in the elm. And you'll have to buy the book to understand the whole story, but I don't want to take up too much time. But just thanks to the writers, it was a pleasure. You know, those emails are flying. We have hundreds and hundreds in the email account from those discussions, and you know, it was my privilege to serve our club, and as imperfect as it might have seemed at times, but you know, we were all in it together. I appreciate that. Now I'd like to just read my short story called Cynthia. It's a river in Oregon. Mary Catherine closes her eyes under a ragged straw hat, shifts the inner tube tighter under her arms. Below her dangling feet and painted toenails, the water churns. 40-foot deep snowmelt, boulders, trees grabbed when the spring runoff stole the dirt from the roots of ancient conifer stands. This stretch of the Santiam River, smooth on top, deceives her. She interprets this wild Oregon land using her Texas map. All she knows is that heat and those slow rivers of Texas. She dawdles, watching for river snakes, never looking up the bank to their cabin. She hopes the kids won't wake from their naps until she feels up to going back in time to put dinner on the table. Though the war is over, her husband runs the house like an army camp. She, his junior officer, the 3 babies, soldiers. Her daydreams move this hot riverbank bramble's perfume to a Texas sunken yard where she and Sonny, hiding from their yelling father, discover blackcaps ripe and sweet. The impact takes her by surprise. The yell reaches her ears underwater. Down and down she goes, her skin icy, her screams trapped by bubbles. She rises and sinks, rises and sinks. Sunshine is replaced by the deep, dank dark of shadowy shapes and jagged edges and rushing cold. Thank you.
Next up is Juanita J. Martin, and you can follow along on page 45. The Harpist. Melodious chimes, flesh against metal strings, become one in concerto of song. An angel comes to serenade where morning has broken.
touching lives with every stroke. Harmonious sounds blended with love soothe the ear, the heart, as souls sit entranced. Applause echoes beyond a gangster's paradise, while music, like a river, pulls you into its flow. And if you want to know the story behind this particular poem, see me afterwards and buy the book. Thank you.
All right, who hasn't bought a book yet? Just kidding. Next up is Mona Mechling. Did I do that good? Mechling. Mechling.
Thank you for being here. Mine is titled Choosing a Goddess, page 33. Look at that little body of water off the Arabian Sea. I think I'm justified in being terrified of my son being stationed on a warship in the United States Navy as I, a Sonoma County liberal pacifist, send my son off to war. At the goddess gatherings I attend, my friend the priestess evokes our deities as she observes us in the circle. If I am going to be mother to a member of the military, I'm going to have to find my own goddess to worship. Intuitively, I will find the goddess I need. We will be attached at the hip for the next 10 months while my sailor boy is out to sea. I start with sea goddesses and hope they aren't sirens who sing out through the fog and mist to drag the unsuspecting sailors into the depths. Today, a Wikipedia link has me looking at Sedna, goddess of Inuit mythology. No, he's not stationed in the Pacific Northwest. I keep looking. Ah, a Babylonian goddess, Tiamat, who personifies the sea, attributed with the mixing of the waters. In the Persian Gulf, we're told, fresh waters from the Arabian aquifer mix with the salt waters of the sea. I like her so far. Tiamat has a battle. Deities gather in terror. Anu, or so rumor has it, slices Tiamat in half, making her ribs the vault of heaven and earth. The sources of the 2 old rivers in Iraq come from her tears. And the Lord stood upon Tiamat's hinder parts, and with his merciless club he smashed her skull. He cut through the channels of her blood, and he made the north wind bear it away into secret places. Violence is always so graphic in those old stories. The World Wide Web offers peace goddesses from many cultures: Celtic, Roman, Native American. I feel an affinity with Native American stories, so let's take Whoopi next. Her name means meteor. If she becomes my deity, can I look to a meteor shower in my sky and think that my sailor son can see the same shooting stars in the Middle Eastern sky amid the jet engine fire? How about this? I'll make a medicine bag to hold the sacred elements of my peace goddess Whoopi. And every so often, when I'm feeling really scared, give a shout out to my sea goddess Tiamat. Okay, off to collect my charms.
Next up is David Mechling. Good?
Right on the check. Thank you, everybody. My piece is got a little bit of a boy tinged in it too. Mine. Pardon me?
Tell them the page.
The page is page 11. How I Came to Cook. My wife and I have been married for more than 30 years, and cooking is a shared task. I began cooking in the beginning. Let's try it again. In the beginning, my wife's cooking was trial and error, more error. But I thought, without losing too much weight, until one Friday night, I made what I thought was a minor mistake. Things took a different turn. It was after 7 in the evening when I heard the key in the front door. I greeted my wife with a cheerful, "Hi, honey, glad you're home. What's for dinner?" I need to say that my wife was 8 months pregnant at the time. After a heated one-sided outburst, we both agreed that I would plan, shop, and make dinner on Friday nights, since I was home early. The following week, I read every cookbook we had to find the perfect meal. My wife no doubt thought I would just end up ordering pizza. Friday night, she walked in smiling. "Hi, honey, glad we're home. What's for dinner?" "Oh, it doesn't smell like pizza. What the heck are we having?" The two of us sit down to devour what the cookbook said was a serving for 4. There was only a small snack size left. Linguine and clam sauce was a good time for our first try. After this little victory, it was table for two at Dave's place every Friday night. Thank you.
Catherine Mayle Miller.
Page 157. Into the light. She was young to be in such trouble. 2 children depended on her to mother them, yet she was lost to that responsibility. Stinking drunk was what she was, but to her mind, whatever was left of a brain soaked in alcohol, she was simply tired. Tired of feeling at fault for a fading marriage, tired of wanting so much to be somebody other than who she was, tired of making excuses for obligations not met, tired of manipulating others so that she wasn't at fault for troubling lapses in memory. Carol was simply tired. The boys were making milkshakes in the kitchen with her grandmother. At least she thought they were. She had driven 150 miles to her parents' home. Bradley was away as usual on some secret mission with the Navy. An intelligence officer was always on a mission too secret to be shared with a mere wife. Bradley had warned her that it would be tough to be a military wife, but what did a 22-year-old woman know of marriage, let alone marriage to a naval aviator? She'd had a gut reaction to run then, but her need to be married, to be something other than an old maid crocheting Afghans in an antique rocking chair in her parents' home, was so gripping she ignored her intuition. What does a 22-year-old know of intuition? Going to nap, she said in her mother's direction before she stumbled up the front stairs to the middle bedroom. Let her take care of 10-year-old Mitch and 9-year-old Harry. She wanted grandchildren so badly. The drink she carried in her hand sloshed a bit, bourbon and water. She remembered those brandy Alexanders she had so joyfully gotten tipsy on the night she and Bradley were engaged. In those days, drinks were for celebrating. Drinks were fun. She swallowed half the drink and set the glass on the night table. She settled on the bed. The afternoon sun filled the air with warmth. No need for a blanket. Her head was whirling. Suddenly she was awake. It was night. She was on her stomach on the bed in the middle bedroom. It was dark, and something was happening. Oh my God, I passed out. What am I doing here? Where are my boys? Oh my God, there's something on my back. I can't move. What's happening? The middle bedroom. I'm in the middle bedroom, she thought, panic rising. When she was a girl, Carol and her sister had been afraid of this bedroom. Ghosts were here. Why had she not remembered that before going so blithely into the middle bedroom for a nap? She tried to move, but whatever was on her back was heavy. Was there really someone there? She shuddered, fearing something unspeakable happening. Yet there was no voice, no warning for her to keep quiet, just a crush of something unexplained. Summoning all her strength, Carol managed to drag herself off the bed, the weight clinging to her back. What did it want? What could she do now? Arrogance gave her courage. I am in charge here, just as I'm in charge of everything else in my life. All I have to do is get across the room, flip on the light switch, and open the door. She began to move, slowly, dragging the weight that seemed heavier with each step. When her hand found the light switch, her confidence soared. Aha, I'll show you, ghost indeed. She flipped the switch. Nothing happened. The room was dark and still. Even the weight on her back seemed still, waiting for her next move.
Arlene Miller. Page 70, Kaleidoscope. I want this. No, I want that. Hold on to your hat. I've changed my mind again. Do you mind? Do you mind that I see life as a series of moments in time? Snapshots? Turns of the kaleidoscope? Each one is different,
but a result of the one before, like the moments of our lives constantly turning, constantly changing, forever rearranging. And even when we want to, we can't recreate the picture we saw before. Are we growing, or just rearranging the same old pieces in different patterns? Are we growing like this poem that started with a simple idea and grew deeper? Like my love for you, which changes often its fleeting patterns, but never the intensity of its color or the complexity of its pieces.
Barbara D. Mooring, page 47.
Good afternoon. Where is the wind?
Oh. Where is the wind? Where is the wind, the gentle wisp that refreshes my cheek? Creeps silently among flowers, causing the most delicate leaflets and fragile petals to quiver and tremble. The flirtatious breeze that lifts the hems of summer skirts and pulls at frills and ribbons. The playful zephyr that tumbles through branches and hums with the chorus of 1,000 leaves. Glides over ponds, engaging riplets to dance in rhythmic unison. Conducts a ballet in fields of golden wheat, scatters clouds of dandelion puffs, then vanishes. Where does it hide? Where is the wind?
Cindy Pavlanak, page 182.
Pub wait. Dateline, the Ram's Arms Pub, North Yorkshire, UK. What'll it be, miss? The bartender set a beer mat in front of Sierra on the mahogany bar as she placed her wet raincoat over a chair. What beers do you have on tap? He stood behind a half-dozen beer pulls, their bright tap handles vying for attention. Budweiser, he said. Sierra felt a few close patrons eavesdropping. Please, she said in her best, don't insult me because I'm a blonde woman, American accent. Real beer. She pointed to the festive beer pulls. What's this ram's head beer? A mischievous mutter flitted from the billiards table behind her. Several young men saluted her with their pint glasses and cue sticks. She pulled up a bar stool next to an elderly gent as a barman set a fresh glass of black brew in front of him. Cheers. The gent saluted the barman with his brimming glass and took a long, slow sip, setting his glass down 2 inches shorter. The air seemed to sigh in contentment around him. Black Sheep ales, the barman said with pride. He lightly touched the first pull handle. A black ram's head radiated from an electric orange background. Golden sheep, light, blonde, dry. Sierra bit back a comment about claiming liquids dry. Sometimes being a writer got in the way of communicating. He moved his hand to the next tap, a fierce black ram on a black background. Black Sheep Bitter, he announced. Superb premium ale with robust fruit, malt, and hops. A powerfully flavored pint that packs a punch. Sierra thought she noticed a few punters reciting the words along with him. A wolf in sheep's clothing, the barman added tenderly. Strong, complex. Misunderstood, someone added from down the bar. I can certainly relate to Black Sheep, Sierra said to no one in particular. And why is that, miss? Asked the elderly gent to her right. She wasn't used to strangers having such good hearing. She turned to get a good look at him. Weathered, whiskered, worn, he had lifted his full-to-the-brim glass with a steady farmer's hand. I was supposed to be an astronaut, Sierra said. I was an aviator, you know. I was supposed to be a sheep farmer. She wanted to tell him she was a travel writer, but hesitated. I'm a traveler, she said, then remembered that meant homeless gypsy. Damn British English pretending to be real English. I'm an explorer, she tried again, and then immediately frowned. That sounded like she climbed Everest or searched for the source of the Nile. I'm on a journey, a seeker, an adventurer, exploring. She waved her hand, exasperated for sounding so new age flaky. Californian? Yes, how did you guess? She heard a told you so by the billiards table and saw money change hands. It's your sunny disposition, the gent said, taking a sip on his half-empty pint. Golden sheep? The barman asked. Hardly, her elderly friend snorted. Black sheep, black. Bittersweet, distinctively smooth. She reached for her wallet. Put your money away, the gent said. Pints on me. It's not often we get to see a wee lass knock back a whole pint of bitter. She smiled. Surely the country of Agatha Christie, Mary Shelley, and Tanith Lee knew real women deserved and preferred real ale. If you make it through that, said another gent on her left, the next one's on me. He laid his money on the bar as a vote of confidence. A third gent added to the pile with a pat. Sierra looked at the barman. I'd better order food.
Elaine Webster, page 60. I wrote this poem sitting next to my husband Blake's hospital bed in the intensive care unit right after his heart surgery. So it appears in it started out being part of my journal. It's in the anthology, and it's also part of my book, Heartfelt. 37 years, married for better or worse. Two loving hearts nestled in a world of their own creation. One heart, too big, stopped, faulted. One heart, not big enough. Lost love, with offbeat compulsion, she sank. Losing consciousness, he fell away. Two hearts in need of surgery. Could this be it? The conclusion? What would she do without him? Where would he go without her? Life after death, she prayed. He prayed for the same, yet different things. Soon a world of prayers. God heard. Two hearts, one repaired, one restarted. Heartfelt recovery. Jane Person.
Thanks, Stacy. I lived in Hawaii for 2 years, the end of the 1960s. And every Friday afternoon, or almost every Friday afternoon, I went body surfing. I left the islands, and when friends would go visit, they'd say, "What can we bring you from the islands?" And my answer was always the same, a wave. This is a poem in memory of that. Sonnet 155, In Need of a Wave. Hawaii wave, life to a parched self, strengthens my senses, makes me whole. Warm, sweet, plumerial scent, ginger too. Salty lips hint of tropical drink. Sun-baked brown body embraced in heat. Surf drums upon stony cymbals as each water wave overwashes my godly sun-beach stretch of land. Today I've left those tanned beaches. I need a single wave for reverie. How will my foamy gift be carried? What friend, what plane, what ship can bear it to my home? I ask you all, pack carefully for space. Bring a wave, perhaps tiny, from that sacred place.
Susanna Solomon.
Hello there. This is the broccoli dance. When my daughter Alyssa first moved back home with her young children, I was none too pleased. She was going through a divorce, and I couldn't say no. Away went my sewing room, and in came 3 beds and mountains of clothing, toys, books, televisions, and bicycles. My utility bills have gone up. My projects are stalled. I'm picking up after 2 charmers, 5-year-old Owen and 3-year-old Miela. They call me Nana, and my heart warms at the sounds of their voices. Sometimes I get to take them to school. Their mother and I have come to an understanding, and that's a comfort to me. My favorite time is when Alyssa is in the kitchen trying to get the kids to eat. Do the broccoli dance, Mom, Miela asks, her blonde hair falling in her eyes, the back of her head a rat's nest of hair, stiff and knotted from her nap. I'll do the dance if you eat some broccoli, Alyssa says, starting the negotiation. Miela looks at her mother, then at the floret of broccoli on her plate. A picky eater, she can go through a whole day without a full meal. My daughter stands back from the table. Owen chews on his broccoli and watches. My daughter, at 37, a hotshot, a CPA, an independent woman with a soon-to-be ex-husband, 2 young kids, a nervous stomach, and intense headaches, stretches her arms over her head and starts to wiggle. I sit on the kitchen stool, knowing better than to interfere with how she raises her kids. She turns, waves her arms, jerks her hips back and forth, and swings herself around. The broccoli floret is lifted off the plate. Miela studies it at eye level. My daughter hesitates, staring. Keep going, Mom, Miela starts chewing. My daughter dances in front of the window, a grin across her face. Her hips gyrate and Owen giggles. Miela chews her broccoli and down it goes. I sit on the stool, amazed. One more broccoli flower down, one more dance, 2 smiling blondies in the bright kitchen light, sunlight streaming through the window, the sound of a radio softly in the distance as the sun passes from window to window. It's an old story, a mother intent on getting her children to eat, a child wanting to be entertained, a reluctant grandmother sharing her home, a day to remember, a day to cherish, a day to dance the broccoli dance. Thank you.
Barbara Taboni. Did I do that right? Yes!
Okay. The name of my story is Cheers. It's on page 9. In my opinion, the very idea was a loser. The New Year's Eve party invitation read, "Bring an unwrapped gag gift for the white elephant table." We were lucky enough to draw the highest number, meaning we got first choice. Dave chose the beer stein, a hefty 32-ounce glass mug with a Budweiser logo. I had to admit his choice was better than the Bart Simpson undershorts or the plastic flowers, but not the Christmas placemats or the Santa napkin holders. This wasn't a holiday tea for the Red Hat Society. It was the annual celebration for the Four-Wheel Drive Club. Dave's buddies were impressed with the beer stein. What was I to do? When we lugged it home, there was the question of where to put it. It was too bulky to fit in the cupboard. Displaying it was not an option. A very persuasive point in my argument was the impressionable age of our teenage son, Jim. But what would we do with it while waiting for Bigfoot to come over and ask for a brewski? "Did you see the other choices?" Dave asked as he happily slipped it into our freezer. Right then, I started to plan the mug's demise. An accident? Oh yes, that beer glass, darling. It shattered when I was cleaning the freezer, slipped and fell. Yes, it did. Tried to catch it. The dishwasher? Wedged it in too tight with the blender, sorry. It jumbled around and cracked. Swiped?
Remember the Super Bowl party, dear? The Porters brought a couple of friends. A shifty-looking pair, weren't they? I think they had their eye on that mug, and when we turned our backs, it vanished. But don't you worry, their karma will follow them. Still, the mug sat idly waiting for thirst, and some did use it. Not me, of course. I did not possess enough strength to lift it. But Dave and Jim thought it was just right for their needs. Time passed. Its presence in the freezer became familiar. The mug's Christmas Wonderland scene of the Clydesdale horses hauling a Budweiser wagon through the snow greeted me when I moved it from place to place, reaching for ice cream, the frozen juice concentrate, or a chuck roast. I had gotten used to the feel of it, the weight of it, as I moved it from one place to another. One afternoon, Jim blended a strawberry smoothie, and I watched him fill the frozen stein. Pink foam cascaded down its sleek surface like champagne bubbles in a full-size trophy cup. When had that white elephant become so elegant? How had this monolithic thirstbuster gained my respect? Cheers.
Michelle Wing, page 38.
Challenging my absolutes. On a Tuesday night at 9, I was on the edge of town pumping gas into my car. I heard a voice from the street call out, "Hey, mister, I'll give you $5 if you give me a ride downtown." I am easily mistaken for a man with my shorn hair, hat, and a bulky coat. Perhaps he wouldn't have asked if I were a woman. But I was annoyed. I turned toward him with a semi-scowling face, not answering immediately. My annoyance came not from his request, but because this is an absolute for me. I never give a ride to a stranger. If I see someone stranded on the highway, I will call 911 for them. But I never stop. Even in my small town, that rule holds. It is non-negotiable. This man was putting me in the position of having to say no. And I don't like having to tell people no when they ask me for a favor. Finally, I said, "I can't give you a ride." He turned and began again to walk down the road. I watched him go. He was elderly, carrying groceries in a cloth bag. He shuffled when he moved. I could tell it was from fatigue, not drunkenness. I watched him try to hitchhike. No one stopped. I stood at the gas pump, finishing up. Something told me I needed to challenge this decision of mine. What do they say in Zen? Nowhere standing. No fixed rules. I tried to think of how I could change my mind while still feeling safe. A couple of years ago, my dog and I were attacked on a walk by 2 off-leash dogs. Since then, I have kept pepper spray in my car for our outings. I reached into the glove box, took out the pepper spray, and put it into the cubbyhole on the driver's side. I unlocked the passenger side door and lowered the window, pulled out into the street, and stopped alongside the man. "Where do you need to go?" "Bless you," he said. His name was Michael. He had spent the day navigating the bus system in Sonoma County, and he simply didn't have it in him to walk the last 1.5 miles to his senior apartment complex. He didn't mention the $5. We both knew that had nothing to do with why I had stopped. I drove him to his front door. That one small act of kindness made it much easier for me to go to sleep that night.
Jean Wong, page 106.
This story is a memoir story about myself when I was 11. My brother was 13, and my brother was a magician, and he used to dazzle me with his tricks, and I used to pay him to tell me the secret. And one day I walked in the garage, and he was making this huge magic box, and he told me that I was going to disappear in it. And I was just so delighted because I thought that I was going to be like, the Aladdin lamp girl or something. Even though he did tell me the secret was it's kind of a V-shaped box, and I was going to have to tip to appear and disappear in it. But I was really excited because I just thought that I was just going to be this amazing princess. So this story starts about a third way down the story. We practiced for weeks as, depending on the weight of my body, Terry, my brother, had to make certain adjustments with the swinging piano, and I needed to build up my strength and agility. Finally, the day of the performance arrived. I woke up drowsy from lack of sleep, having fitfully dreamt of the fame that would soon be mine. I got dressed and went into my mom's room to check the length of my skirt in her full-length mirror. But the image that stared back at me was unsettling. Where was the glamour in the reflecting glass? It didn't seem right for me to be climbing into a magnificent red box dressed in a pink blouse with a yellow and orange plaid skirt. I never paid much attention to how I looked, as my parents emphasized good grades rather than appearance. But lately, my mom told me that I was eating too much ice cream and that only pregnant women had hips like mine. I could see that I didn't look Princess Slim. I looked through my mom's clothes to find something more suitable, but all her clothes had ruffles and bows. I went back to my own closet. Everything I tried on made me look more ridiculous. That ill-matching skirt and blouse would just have to do. As I passed by the mirror for the third time, I caught sight of my hair. My mom had taken me to the hairdresser a year ago for my first permanent wave. As my bangs grew longer and covered my eyes, she refused to let me trim any of my expensive curls. My hair was a mess, wild and unkempt, random strands sticking out. I got some bobby pins and tried to flatten everything down. I used up the whole pack, and still, the mirror held no Hollywood image. My dad began honking the horn. I had to go. At school, I found myself backstage peering at the big magic box, sitting front and center. I breathed in shallow gulps when I spotted some friends and even a few of my teachers. The announcer introduced the great Tarini Houdini. The excitement felt overwhelming. Terry, Sidney, his friend, and I made our appearance. Managing a bow to the audience, I climbed into the box. Terry was a natural on stage. He lacked the usual adolescent awkwardness and was a convincing performer. He began his suave, personable magician's patter about this never-reviewed ancient wonder. He slowly turned the box around, uttering various abracadabras, alakazam, incantations. The disappearing part was fine as I deftly leaned against the panel and brought it toward the back. I could hear the oohs and ahs as Terry opened the front panel, showing an empty box. Terry began to turn the box around, going into the smooth talking buildup about the box's astounding capacity to reverse the laws of matter. But it was when I was trying to appear that my skirt got caught in the panel. I couldn't get the right balance to push the panel toward the front. The dense air pressed about me. A wild fear seized me like an animal trapped in a cage. I could hear Terry approaching the box, ready to open the panel. I pushed as hard as I could, cutting my finger against a screw. The panel began to move, flipped to the front, and landed with a loud thump. I managed to stand up and present myself, my skirt torn, my finger bleeding, and all the bobby pins dangling from my hair. I hardly heard the applause as we bowed and exited the stage. After the show, my classmates came rushing up to me and asked, "Where were you? Did you feel invisible? What did it feel like to disappear?" Their eyes glistened eagerly, expectant. But I was tired and sweaty. My finger hurt. I felt scornful at how easily they'd been duped. Trick seemed obvious. Saw one of my teachers approaching, a bright smile on her face. I turned away knowing that only my foolish delusions had disappeared in the red and black box. That day marked the end of my fascination with magic. I never again paid Terry money for the secrets of his tricks and began to view his performances with a hard skepticism. For years, the magic box sat aging in our garage until it was used as a doghouse.
And tonight's final reader is Harry B. Reid on page 75.
This is some more of my biblical scholarship. I think a number of you are familiar with the work I do. And this came from a recent discovery from the rather dead Sea Scrolls. It's called Thou Eden, and it's from Genesis. In the beginning, about 6,100 years ago, Eden was much like it is today, except that it wasn't crowded with aluminum trailers. There was but one trailer, and it was called Airstream. It was about 5 cubits wide, 4 high, and about 12 long. It had a door on one side, a window on another, and an extra window in the back. There was no window in the front. The door faced south and had a small awning where God would sit, mulling whether or not he'd done everything he'd set out to do. Outside Eden were all kinds of animals, birds, and fishes, just like what we have today. They didn't enter Eden because all around were signs that said, "Don't." Inside Eden, beside God, lived Adam, a man, Eve, a woman, and Snake, a snake. They didn't live in the Airstream with God because it was too small. They slept outside under trees because the weather was mild and the bugs hadn't been created yet. Food was easily acquired by reaching up into a tree for a date or a pomegranate. There was one apple tree from which hung a sign that said, "Uh-uh." Adam and Eve and Snake were good friends, although Snake was more cerebral and contemplative than the other two. Plus, being without arms and legs, he couldn't play jump over, where they'd end up in a heap on the ground laughing, and Eve would exclaim, "Boy, that was something." As I say, Snake couldn't play all their games, but he could wrap himself around a tree limb, which Adam and Eve couldn't. At night, when he did this, he would wink his yellow eyes back and forth like lights on the Flatiron Building in Times Square, and Adam and Eve would have to guess what Snake was trying to say. They never guessed right, but they really didn't try, because in a short while, there were no minutes then, they knew Snake would tell them to sleep with a vivid make-believe story about a huge sack from which God would reach down and pull out creatures. Snake painted his stories with a broad brush, because Adam and Eve really didn't care about details, preferring rather to play games like Tickle Ickle. And they liked the sound of the stories, but beyond that, they were not at all interested. For example, when Snake would ask, "Have you heard the one about the..." Adam and Eve would always say no, even though he'd told them the story the night before. And Snake would tell the story all over again while they played Oofty Toofty, a game where each time you lost you had to put on a fig leaf until you were all covered up with fig leaves. Sometimes Snake would catch Eve looking longingly up at apples hanging from his tree, and he'd admonish her, "Don't even think about that." After a time, there weren't many years then either, Snake began to lose interest in his friends. Often he'd become moody, strangely quiet, thoughtful, and at night, after he'd shed his skin, coil himself up comfortably up in his tree, munch on an apple, read Wittgenstein or Schopenhauer, or look at a little cuneiform tract the landscape contractor left behind, which had pictures of nude garden worms and snails and slugs and other invertebrates, pictures that gradually began to play upon Snake's imagination. One night, Snake looked down at Adam and Eve lying together in their dreams, and he had a very peculiar feeling along the length of his body, about 4 cubits long. He felt separated from the two because their arms and legs were hooked together, reminding him that he had none. Suddenly he felt lonely, like he didn't belong, and although his skin was more colorful than an argyle sock, he felt ugly and slimy looking. It was then that he decided to leave Eden and search for limbless intellectual companionship elsewhere. While the kids were asleep, Snake packed up what he had, which wasn't much, and slinked down the tree. After he said bye-bye to Adam, who whispered something back to him, he placed a ripe little red apple in the palm of Eve's hand and set out down the road that led out of Eden. On the way, he passed the airstream where God was sitting on the front stoop, whittling a statue of a woman with 3 breasts. God held it up and asked Snake, "What do you think?" "Well, to me it seems a bit excessive," Snake said. Whereupon God tossed it onto his reject pile. "What's this? Are you heading out?" Snake said, "Yup, I've leagues to go before nightfall." This perturbed God, who asked, "Did it ever occur to you why I've kept you here in Eden?" "Wittgenstein suggests," Snake began. "Let's not with the Wittgenstein, okay? I've kept you here," God went on, "because I ran short on parts, arms, fingers, legs, those kinds of things. To put it succinctly, you're not all that sharp looking." Then he pulled out his parts list defensively and said, "They're on back order." Hissing like a pressure cooker, Snake said, "So long, amigos, adios," and took off, his body contorting like a Latin dancer. Scarcely had he gotten 10 cubits when God called after him, "Wait, is there anything I should tell the kids?" Snake said, "It's all right, I took care of it," and then continued on until he turned. Even to this day, he doesn't know why, and he said, "Oh, I forgot." "Forgot? Forgot what?" "Adam says he wants to know what time it is." "Adam know?" "That's what he said." And with his forked tongue licking the corners of a sly smile, Snake began to slither out of paradise, and God called on, "That is definitely a no.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. And remember, the Redwood Writers Club is 100% volunteer-powered. So let's give a shout-out to everyone who helped put this together, especially Julie, Cynthia, and everyone else. You know who you are. Woohoo! We rock!